What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I am here today with DGP Blogster, my dude Mariano Gomez. What's up, Mariano? How you doing, bro?
What's going on, bro? I'm actually having fun, just excited about being here today with you, and really want to kick this in high gear. Just coming back from Summit, probably like yourself.
Woo! Oh
Woo!
yeah. Oh yeah.
Where we have quite a bit of fun.
Dude.
I don't know about you, but I had quite a bit of fun out there. Enjoyed meeting the Flow fam. Taking those guys with me, and really, ready to show some cool stuff today.
Heck yeah. So for those of you guys that don't know, you gotta if you don't follow me or Mariano on Twitter, we got together in Orlando, Florida recently. Check out the video. If it's not out yet, it'll be out soon. We got together. He got us into this dynamics after party that was happening, and it just ended up that I got on stage in front of like 850 people and rapped Eminem, which I've never done before.
That was off the chain, man. Really good. I never knew you had it in you, man.
Yeah, so if you want to go check that out, go check out my Twitter. It might be down the feed. I tweet a lot, but there is a video where you can actually see me rapping Eminem. So, okay, enough about that. Me and Mariano today, when we were hanging out in Orlando, he said, dude, I got to do another video. I want to show off this cool thing that I made. And so he's actually got this app that his company has been using, and he's going to go ahead and kind of take it to the next level for us to build in some natural turn-by-turn directions using the Google Maps API. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Mariano, bro, the flow is the flow. The show is yours.
The flow on the show. One of them. Let's go for it, man. All right. So, as you said, this is a simple Powerups that I created. Basically uses ERP data from Microsoft Dynamics GP to entice our salespeople to go out, visit customers, and move forward with some simple things that they can do in their daily routine. So here I have my list. The only thing I want to show you here quickly is if I run this and click on, let's say, this guy, Adam Park, right? That's Adam Park Resort. They're up in Indianapolis. Sounds like we could use a road trip up there, man. So
yeah,
let's try and figure out how we do that. But the bottom line is here, Adam Park has a customer balance with us. We noticed that they're on net 30 payment terms, and the last time they paid was on February 23rd. So perhaps, time to pay a visit, see what's going on if I'm out in the area.
Totally.
So the one thing we can do here is we can send them a message that says, hey, I'm in the area, want to grab lunch and discuss balance. Submit that. We all know that pushes out through the Outlook connector, and we can monitor our inbox for any response.
Awesome.
Okay, this app has been working great, but our sales people have been complaining that they need a little bit more directions on getting to these customers. So what we will do is we will actually kick this in second gear and use the Google Maps API to retrieve a route where we can get to these locations, right?
Awesome.
So right now we're using the static map. That's fine. We're gonna kick this, add the directions to it. So what we want to do is we want to be able to display the directions once the get route button is clicked here.
Yep.
Okay. Couple other things to observe to note here is what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually use excuse me, John. We're going to use Flow to get to this information. As you know, there's plenty of actions that we can leverage within Flow, and we will see how to do that. So I'm not going to talk more about this app. We're just gonna, and I'll show you, by the way, some techniques that I use to build this app out to make sure that it displays the right information that we need. So here's our customer summary page. I usually have a hidden page that you can get to from within the app, but that's where I actually display my variables location. Just some techniques that I've learned from the Powerups community in general.
Yeah.
So I'll show you how we take advantage of that.
This is nice. I always saw Brian and Audrey teaching this. Keep a hidden page where you just got stuff that you need.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm gonna just probably zoom in a little bit so we can see things. So here I keep the current location of the device. So if you are on your way, there's always an indication of where this device is, the destination that I'm going. So that's actually parsed from the parent sheet that you saw before, the parent screen.
Yep.
And here I actually have kind of like an encoded map address that displays the map that's on that page. All I do is pass in this as an image to that previous to that image control. So the only things that we don't have here is the polyline, that's the route, and the encoded polyline. So we'll figure out how that fits in the equation, but I don't want to spend much more time on that.
Okay.
Let's go straight to flow.
Time to go to flow.
Time for flowing. Let's
That's
flow
right.
with this.
That's right.
So one of the things that I want to highlight here is the hundreds of templates that are available to users for building flows, and obviously there's one that probably already have a Powerups button that I need. So let's just click here and see what we get with Powerups, and boom, here it is. So I'm just gonna click here on Powerups button, and we're gonna get flowing with this one, right?
Let's get going. Let's get flowing.
First thing, exactly. The first thing I need is a Powerups trigger, meaning that when I click that button, it's gonna execute this flow. This particular flow is gonna kick in once I associate it, of course, to that button, and it's gonna execute the actions that I want here. So as you can tell, you gotta build out your steps. So the only one thing I'm gonna do here, and this is just personal practice, I put a name to this first.
That's a good practice.
So
That's
let's
a good
go
practice.
and say, this is geo address. I don't know, something cool, right?
Yes,
You and I,
yeah.
we're cool dudes, so we do cool names, right?
That's right. That's right.
So my first step here is gonna be what? So one thing I want to capture from my Powerups is the current location of the device. It's not gonna be anything extremely complex. All it's gonna be is the basically the location, latitude, longitude, where the device is. So
Okay.
we're just gonna call this start address. I'm sorry, we're gonna look for a variable.
Yep.
Pardon me. Right, and what we're gonna do is, I may have actually. Let's do this again. We're gonna look for variables here. Okay. What am I doing wrong?
No S. Variable.
Oh, okay. There we go. Variables. Yeah. And then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna initialize this variable. So now there is a trick that I like to use, John, because one of the things when you do immediately go and choose ask from Powerups, it automatically associate whatever name you have here. So again, first thing I like to do is rename my variables. We're gonna call it start address.
Oh, this is great. You have great practices that you're teaching people here. This is good.
I'm a developer at heart, so those things translate into the no-code, low-code environment as well, and that's what I like to point out. So that's gonna be a string value, and the next thing we're gonna do is ask in Powerups. And look, nicely named after my variable. How about that? That's super cool. So the next thing we're gonna do here is I'm gonna click a new step as well. And we need to get somewhere, right? We already have where we started. We just need to know where we're gonna get. So, or where we're gonna go as far as directions go. So here's variables again, and I'm gonna actually initialize this variable, and I'm gonna call this one, in this case, an address. Okay. So the only thing here is I'm gonna call this an address. This is gonna also be a string. And from here, we're gonna also ask, if we go to see more, ask for this variable in Powerups. So now I have the two key parameters that I need, right?
This is awesome.
The address, I have the ending address. The next thing that the Google API requires you to do, the Maps API, it requires an API key. If you actually go to, I have this over here. If you go to developers.google.com, there's all this information on how you can set up your API key. There's also instructions on how you can use the static map API. and the routes API to get the directions. I'm not gonna
Cool.
dive too much into that, but I do encourage you, if you're watching this video, to go and take a look at that.
Yeah, if you want to copy him, you'll have to do it. So
Exactly. So the new step here is I'm gonna add yet another variable, and that's gonna be my API key. Now, there are ways to add this stuff without necessarily exposing it in your flow, and we can talk about that. Obviously, it's not the topic of this conversation, but we can figure out different ways to do this. But
yeah.
what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna simply initialize this variable. Again, good practice, just rename it first. So this is gonna be my API key, right? API key. And this is gonna be a string. And I'm gonna cheat here because obviously I'm not gonna type this long string out for you. So what I'm gonna do here quickly is I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna pass this on to my clipboard, just paste it out here and move on from there, right? So now we have the API key. Finally, one thing I want to explain from this particular API is once you actually do the request, that's going to be an HTTP action that we're going to use. We need to store that request somewhere, but that request is returned in the form of a string, right?
Okay.
So finally, the last variable I'm going to create, okay, is a variable that we call, in this case, it's going to be initialized variable. We expect to get that back from the API it saves itself. So I'm just going to call this encoded polyline.
And so, just for those of you guys who might not know what variables are, if you don't have any development background, all these really are is empty containers. So all Mariano is doing here is taking data and storing it in a box so that he can use it in later steps in the app and in the flow. This is just a good way to organize things and kind of compartmentalize it so he can use them later.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is that the variables exist while the flow action is, or the entire workflow is executed. Once they're gone, they're gone. Once the flow is completed, those variables are, basically uh, extracted
Asleep.
from memory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a good way. It's a good practice to compartmentalize things. So call this encoded polyline again, and it's going to be a string variable in this case. And I'm gonna leave it empty for now. So it's not gonna have an assigned value. I'm just initializing it. And again, if you go to the developer's guide and you go down to where is it? So the map static API paths, there's all this description down here on how you can actually deal with polylines and how they're encoded in the URL address. So it does take, I'll be honest, it does take a little bit of understanding of APIs and how those work. But we have cool people like that API guy,
Oh
aka
yeah.
Vivek, who is good at that stuff. So the bottom line here, though, is you have the ability to go through this fully documented. Really, nothing is kept in secret
Yep.
as far as how that works. So now, because we need to actually place this request out to a web service, aka the Google Web Service, we're just gonna do a couple things here. The first thing I'm gonna do is that's gonna be an HTTP request. Okay, so uh, wrong typing.
Yeah.
So once I type HTTP here, oh, not that.
Not
Who's
that
that?
one. Not that one.
Not that one. We love SharePoint, don't get me wrong, but that's not the one I'm looking for. Here's HTTP. You will love me because that's a premium feature, right?
It
So,
is. It is.
we love premium features.
We do.
So just make sure you are aware of the licensing behind that if you're gonna use it in your flow. No particular thing to be worried about, but just keep that in mind if you actually have flows that use premium features or Powerups applications that use premium features. There's some licensing component to that.
Yep.
Now, the one thing I want to do here then is we're going to use a get method, meaning that we're going to place a request to that
Give me
service,
some data. Yep.
correct, to give me some data in return. And there's specific, a specific let's say, pattern of that request. So that's the URI component that we're going to actually add here. Is URI is nothing more than a fancy name for really an address, a web service address, a URL.
Yeah. No, totally.
Okay.
And then they can see it right there in that URI,
Yep.
like how you've kind of made it nice and easy and just given yourself little placeholders there for your dynamic content. And so that makes it nice and easy.
Yep.
You guys can pause this right here and kind of take that similar format if you're trying to follow along.
Now, the one thing I actually like to do is I like to place or name the placeholders, because you're probably copying this directly off the developer's guide to figure out how you're going to pass those requests. Well, before you paste it in here, put some nice placeholders to it, name them as close as the variables that you have, so it's easy to replace, right? So if I highlight this now, the start address portion of the URL, see, boom, lo and behold, I have a variable called start address. Boom, I can replace it quickly.
Awesome.
Very simple. Same thing here on the destination portion. I have an end address, and I'm gonna click here and just go out here and replace that for the end address variable. And finally, the key, I'm just gonna highlight these and click on here and replace it for the API key variable. Boom. These are tricks that I actually learned from our good friend Audrey Gordon. So I keep learning from everybody, bro, and put my flow together.
I love it.
So that's good.
I feel like this is not only a lesson in using Google Maps in Flow, but this is like a lesson in best practices in building flows. I feel like you really do use all of the best practices. I'm liking this.
One of the things that best practices do allow you to do is troubleshoot things very quickly, right? So if you have a problem, you're not chasing, what step did I put it in? Did I have a problem initializing a variable? That's easy to do. Did I have a problem replacing those variables in the template that I have? So, it makes things a lot easier when you decompose the problem into more manageable aspects, right?
Totally.
So I'm gonna hit a new step here, and the thing about a response, before I get that, the thing is, we're at the point where we can test this, right? So one of the things that I want to do is I want to save this here, and you will see why I want to test it before we do anything else. So assuming all things being equal, and assuming you have the right key set up, you have everything in place, this should run just fine.
Yep.
I'm gonna test this here. And I'll perform the trigger action in this case, because obviously we don't have our power up set up yet. And one thing that you will see is I can even start with my personal address, 2970 Roxburgh Drive. You guys can send all the flowers and all the to me.
I was gonna say, hey, send postcards.
Postcards, everything, right? Roswell, Georgia, 30076. And let's see, John, what's your address? Just,
right.
throw out something out there, man.
1900
900
Weaver Road.
Weaver Road.
Actually, let's just go ahead and leave it at that. And then Snohomish, SNOHO. No W. HO. MISH.
Yep.
WA 98290.
Okay, cool. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna run this flow with those variables. So if we quickly go to the flow run page, this, by the way, John, this is one of the coolest things that I've seen from Flow. You have the ability to here see, all the how the different inputs and outputs work with your application. So here I can see the inputs, note the address that I typed in for my start address.
Yep.
The end address, that's your address right there. It should be in that value. The API key, well, I don't want you to have to blur out that part of the image, so we'll just skip that.
Okay.
But one thing is our initialization of that encoded polyline. And finally, here's the HTTP request that was placed out, and here's the output. Boom, right? So this output can be daunting a little bit for those of you who are thinking about how you build this. But the idea is you would grab this output, you will then parse it into the next step that I'm gonna add, which is the parse JSON. And that JSON payload, we're gonna further limit the scope of it so we can get the direction. But this is kind of what you get back, right?
Cool.
This
Okay.
is what you kind of get back from it. Now, this was probably way too much to handle. I don't want to deal with this right now. But the
Yeah.
idea is if you sort of kind of limit the and that's because obviously between Georgia and Washington,
It's a
there's
lot of turns.
it's a long trip. Probably another for another cool cool summit trip or something like that, but
Yeah.
certainly not one we want to use for this particular one. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna quickly close this out. But the idea is you will grab that payload,
Okay.
and then the next thing you're gonna do here is you're gonna add a new step, and we would want to parse out that JSON step or the JSON payload that we get back from that flow, from I'm sorry, from that HTTP request. Parse JSON. Here we go. So we're gonna add that step, and the content is obviously gonna be the body from above, and I'm gonna cheat here a little bit. So I hope that's okay
That's
in the
okay.
interest of time and in the interest of accuracy.
I
I'm
have
just
lots of videos that show you how to get a sample JSON schema, so no problem.
good, awesome. So we can put those as references in the bottom of this video. So I'm just gonna copy something from over here that I already have, and copy this guy over here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and paste it. So again, if you would have used the sample payload to generate the schema, that's pretty much you guaranteed to end up with something like this, right?
Yep. Yep.
Nothing complicated, easy to follow, easy to to read into. The next thing that we're gonna do now is we're gonna add, and this is one of the coolest things because you guys have done such a good work on on flow that is almost really um, it does things on its own that you go and you can leverage all the way through. So the next thing, note this out. If I actually add a compose action, right?
Okay.
That's a data operation. So here's my
Yep.
compose
Yep.
action,
It's
right?
kind of like a variable. It's just an empty box where you can mash things together.
Correct. So
Yep.
here, from what I want to do is from the parse JSON, and my monitor is kind of in my way. I'm gonna select the routes, right? If you
Okay.
what routes we'll see right now. If we go back here and we look at this, there's a route of type array. It means that
Okay.
it can return many routes or many ways to get to that destination or from point A to point B. But inside that route, there is a very cool aspect of it called overview polyline. Here it is. And this is the one that really actually introduces the waypoints between point A and point B.
Okay.
Okay. So perhaps this didn't do what I wanted. Maybe what I want to do here is I want to delete this, and I'll explain to you why in a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new step called um, it's a control step actually. And what we want to do is we want to do an apply to each. This is much better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select uh, from the routes itself. Now we're getting somewhere. And I'm going to add my compose action in here. And as I said, I'm going to explain why I had to do this. I sort of implicitly explained it. In reality, because that route is an array,
Yeah.
there's more than one way to get from point A to point B.
Yep.
I need to probably just select one of those routes to display on my map. Yeah, we
Yep.
could get fancy and try to display all of them, but for simplicity of this example, I'm just going to choose one route out of that list of routes.
Yeah.
Does
So
that
an
make sense?
array just means many, right? There's several, and then the apply to each means what he's going to do is he's going to take these further actions and then apply it to each of those routes in the
Correct.
array. Yeah.
And really, what I'm interested in from that particular route is I'm interested in the let me see. Um, this particular step, which is the overview polyline, not the step, but the particular segment of that JSON document that I'm interested is to narrow it down all the way to the polyline itself.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? I mean, am
That
I
makes
making
perfect sense. No, no, no.
Good.
We're with you.
So what I'm gonna do here now is add an additional action. And remember that variable that we set here for the encoded polyline? So we're gonna go back to encoded, I'm sorry, variables. You know, sometimes it's kind of hard to type and keep everything straight in your mind as you go
Think
along. But
and type. Oh yeah,
yeah,
totally.
think and type all at the same time. So I'm gonna set this variable, and that variable is gonna be my encoded polyline variable. And what I want to set it to at this point is I want to set it to the encoded polyline.
Yep.
Hold
So
on.
now that you have that value that came out of the parse JSON, right?
Yep. That should be somewhere around
It should
here.
shouldn't it be at the top?
Yeah, from the compose action, all I need is the output. That's
Okay.
all. That's all I'm interested in here.
Okay.
Okay. And just so we on the same page, I think that's all there is that we need, because in reality we need the output from the compose action, pass that on to that variable, and off we go. Cool.
Cool.
So once we're done with this, we want to then create a new step here, and that's outside the apply each block. So the apply each is going to do its thing, and then what we want to do then is finally we got to the point where we want to return things back to Powerups. So
Okay.
I'm just going to type Powerups here, right? And if I select Powerups, there's an action called respond to Powerups or flow. Boom. So we're going to add that. So what are we going to pass on to Powerups and flow? Well, I want to pass on that text block. And that text block is called, we're gonna designate it as polyline, so we know when we see it in the IntelliSense in Power Apps, it will basically reference that particular text field. So
All
what are
right.
we referencing here?
Check your spelling there. I think you're at
Yeah,
missing a couple
yeah.
letters.
I can't really spell right now. There we
There you
go.
go.
And the final thing that we're getting out of that basically is we're getting the encoded polyline variable that we assigned in this apply step, right? So
Yep.
somewhere down here, set variable, encoded polyline. What we want to do now is pass that on to Powerups.
Awesome.
What do you think so far? You think this will work?
I think it's gonna work. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
this
so
is
too.
cool, man.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's just go and save this out. And again, if you want to overview some of these best practices, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end up creating a separate video individually where I can explain some of my best practices and
Yeah.
techniques that. So
Best
uh,
practices video from Mariano. I just heard him say it. Now you got to ask him about it if you don't see it soon.
got it. There we go. You know, you can get some messages back from this. So we're gonna save this, exit here, and I think we're done for the most part with the flow. So we
All right.
call our flow geo address. So we're gonna go back over here to Power Apps, and I'm gonna go to this customer summary window.
Okay.
So what we said was we wanted to then invoke that flow, right? And we want to make sure that that flow executes with the parameters that we're going to pass in. And those parameters are basically going to be, for my start address, it's going to be my current location. And for my end address, it's going to be the destination where this
My
customer,
house.
yeah, where this customer is located. So
Okay. All
I
right.
just want to make sure that's clear.
Cool.
All right, so here in the get route button, what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply invoke that flow. So we're gonna go over here to action, right? And one of the ones that I have is my flow action. So I want to basically embed that flow in my application. So here's my
Okay.
geo address, and this is the magic of flow and power apps working together. So now I gotta pass in the parameters.
Okay.
Okay. So if you notice, one of the things that I'm gonna do here is I already have if you remember, let's go over here. If you remember, I already have on my hidden page,
Yep.
I have the actual text with the current location of the device.
Yep. Yep.
This particular field is called txt location. So that's what I want to pass in as my
Okay.
first parameter. And again, best practice, because I don't have to plug this particular page that is a working page or working screen with the information that I have on the other one. So I have txt location here, right? Oh
Yep.
yeah, look at it right here.
That's
And what I
awesome.
want to do is pass in the text, the content of that variable. There we go. Boom. That's it. txt location
Okay.
text.
Okay.
So the next thing we want to do is we want to pass in the encoded address to the the route or the flow that we're calling. So in this particular case, that one is called, if you go over here again, this is the encoded address. So this is a txt encoded address, right? So I'm
Okay.
just go over here, select this guy right here again, and type in txt encoded address. And again, is the content of the address itself. So that's the text. All right. Life would be very simple and easy with this stuff, except for the fact that now I need to remember that my flow returns some data back to me, right?
Yes.
To make
Yes.
sure that what I capture that somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use set variable over here, right? The set, and the first thing I need is a variable parameter. So for this particular one, I'm gonna call it encoded polyline. Just to make things easy, follow a simple sequence of logic, because we said that that's what we're returning from the other one, right? And that's gonna, or from the flow itself. So at the end, boom, close it, and that's it. Now, again, I'm a developer at heart. I'm a big time C# developer, so I use semicolon at the end of my sentences. You don't have to do that if that's the one formula that you're writing. But if your formula has many lines of different instructions, you will need the semicolon. So I just got
Okay.
used to doing that from my C# development itself. So
Mariano,
not.
you're a great teacher, man. I love all the details. I love the best practices. This is great.
So moving on, then the other thing that we need to do then is we need to figure out a way to deal with this, right? So we have the encoded polyline variable. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go over here to my hidden page, because that's where I do all the nitty-gritty operations that I have. So the one thing I wanna do here then is I wanna add, let me show you something really cool about this. If I do encoded polyline.
Oh, you're missing. You got an extra D in there.
Yeah, well, no, I can't type for anything today. So if I do encoded polyline, but that's where IntelliSense helps, right? You don't have to
Yep.
type all this stuff out. That polyline, that's what I'm gonna get. So let me run this quickly and show you what we're talking about here.
Okay.
All right. Probably not from this page. That's probably not a good idea. That's my hidden page. That's not never gonna show anything. So if I hit get route here, this thing should work,
It's
right?
gonna
So
grab your location. Gonna grab their location.
right. It's gonna
Yep.
grab the location. If I'm working in a browser, then it's gonna submit the closest location to my IP address and use that as a mechanism. So if we go back over here to hidden, boom, look at that. This is
Oh.
my decoded polyline, my encoded polyline
Okay.
so far. I might have the labels mislabeled, but who's looking?
Yeah.
Right? But I can pass this on to this next address that I need, and I'll explain why. Is because this is formatted with additional information that I can't really use to get the data over to the API, to the static maps API. So I gotta get rid of things like this points, colon, semicolon, blah blah blah. And at the end of this, you have a whole bunch of other text that is probably not needed. But then again,
Okay.
comes our friend, our substitute formula, right? Our substitute function in Powerups. And I'm just going to cheat again and copy this out, but you will see why. It's because it's pretty darn close to what I still need, right? So let me just go and expand this a little bit. And here is my encoded polyline function again. Let me just select this from here because sometimes it doesn't like a straight up copy paste. So again, just tricks that you learn as you use this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Here's my substitute. And what am I substituting? I'm substituting this whole thing called column, you know, what is it? Brackets,
Oh,
and
the
then
squiggly brackets.
squiggly brackets, and then the double quotes, and then points, and the double quotes, and the semicolon, and blah blah blah. I'm substituting that part first for a blank character. Then I'm adding the other one at the end, right? So this is a nested substitute, which is pretty cool. And I'm eliminating that last quote or double quote and squiggly
Dude,
bracket again.
this is intense. Wow. I'm
Again,
impressed.
I nest this out, and then I
Okay.
can substitute the double backslash for a single backslash, and then I'm good. Now, I know this might seem complex for the initiated, the uninitiated user, but let me tell you something. You can break this down as well. So you can create one variable or one field that shows you one. You can create another field that then does the second substitute, and a third field that does the last substitute, which will be the last result that you get. Again, as you gain experience, those things are not necessarily something that you would do as an advanced user, right? So
Yep.
I just want to
Yep.
make sure that is clear. Don't be intimidated by these things. Um, you know, they're nested substitutes just as much as they could be three different variables.
It's awesome though. This is awesome. I love seeing wizards do magic in front of me.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You're
Appreciate that.
welcome.
Not
Yeah,
consider
yeah.
a wizard yet, but I'm getting there. So the one thing that I want to note here is I already had a map, a customer summary map here, right?
Yep, yep.
So that was already encapsulated in this call that I previously have made to the API.
Hmm.
So basically, the static map returns an image, and that's pretty cool because that's all we need, an image, and we pass that on to image the image control in Powerups. So the next thing that I need to do now is I need to somehow inside of this template add the encoded polyline so I can get the actual route.
The line on top of the map.
Correct. Now,
Yep, yep.
the good thing about the Google API is it does return yet another image with the route printed on it. So it's not like you're getting two separate images. So that's kind of cool. So what I had to do then was copy this same template that I have here and look a little bit at the API, only to note that all I had to do was add the path, right, plus the encoded polyline text that I get
Okay.
back from Flow, and that I kind of massaged a little bit up here. So that's kind of what we're passing back to that. The end result is we can then take this particular dude right here and assign it to the map image as well. So I'll show you a little bit of the mechanics that I use there because that's also I find it fairly cool. So here in the get route, what we want to do is we want to say, hey, if we get back a route, I want to switch between the standard static map that I have here to show the one that has the route. So all I'm going to do here is simply add another instruction of code that says something like update context. And I already had a variable that I a context variable that I created and initialized um, in the screen on in the screen on, let me see if remember what the action is. It's hard to keep all this stuff straight in your head. So if you look at the customer summary here, I already have a property where I actually on the invisible where I actually initialize the show route to false. And
Okay.
what I am doing here now is if anybody clicks on this button to retrieve a um a route, what I'm gonna do is I am gonna update the context and I'm gonna say show route. Right, here it is. I don't have to type it out fully. And
Yep.
I'm just gonna set the true.
True. Yep. Okay.
Boom. Okay. So that's pretty cool. So finally
Okay.
here on my map itself, I'm gonna say if not show route. So basically, if I'm gonna show the route, if I'm not requested to show the route, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show the standard encoded URL, and that's gonna give me just this map with the point here.
Yep.
If it's requested, so meaning if somebody push the get route button, what I want to do then is show the other one with the route. Simple as that. If I click this and I hit get route again, hopefully this all works.
Come on.
There you go. Boom. Look at
Ah.
now. I had also created a nice zoom bar and control. So if I start to zoom out, look at that, my friend. This is our
Nice.
next epic drive from Atlanta to Indiana to some sort of conference out there. I don't know. I know. I mean,
Yeah.
this is it, John. I mean, if you find, I think this is super useful because it shows again the power of the platform combined, right?
Totally.
One thing that Flow does allow you to do is to break down a problem in its finite pieces. You know, think about how the workflow is going to operate. Then Powerups does its best thing, which is display the results for what we just built here. So, you
Heck
know,
yeah.
and then on top of it, I'm using Microsoft Dynamics GP in the backend to supply this data. So this is a complete solution for anybody that is looking for something similar.
Hell
And
yeah.
I'm more than happy to give you the details on how the rest of the application was built. But that's for another session, bro.
Yo, that sounds like another video.
It sounds like it. Sounds like we
Heck
already
yeah.
got them planned out, right?
Heck yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yo, I love this because I have a few videos in my repertoire that really talk about like getting in deeper with your customers, like how to get a sales playbook delivered to
Yep.
your pocket. Now imagine if you tie this together. You map to your customer when you land on site, suddenly a geolocation trigger hits and you get a playbook with all that data in your pocket to say, oh, hey, by the way, not only the sales data, but here's some news from that customer and our last few emails from that customer, right? And so like this whole platform, suddenly you start to stack all these things together and everybody gets to do a whole lot less work, which is what
So
I like.
it's all about, to me, it's all about understanding what the true business problem is. I mean, we can play with stuff along back and forth, but once you have and identify the business case, that's where the real power of the platform show its face. You
Heck
are
yeah.
able to put together a solution end to end. And all in all, maybe what was the most complex thing that I did here? Perhaps some nested substitute commands. That's probably the most
Yeah,
complex,
yeah, yeah,
right? The rest was
definitely.
just, defining my flow, calling that flow, updating a variable here to switch between the map and so and or the route, and that was it, man.
That's
That
it.
was it. That was it. The rest of the stuff is just icing on
Ah,
the cake. Just the
awesome.
way we like it.
Mariano, man, thank you so much, dude. This was awesome. For those of you guys that don't follow Mariano yet, I'm going to go ahead and put all his info down in the description. Be sure to go check out his Twitter, check out his YouTube, follow him all over. He's a super cool dude and always sharing goodness like this. Mariano, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. See you
All
next
right.
time.
Later, bro.
Peace out.